going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. I'm SwipaCam. Welcome back to the channel. And we have one of my absolute favorites, Chris Marlowe. Chris, how are you doing today? Thank you for spending some time with us, by the way.
I'm doing well. An off day between games and, thinking about the big game with the Phoenix Suns on Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, Chris, I just want to say I'm a big fan of yours. I've been watching you for a very long time now. I've had a chance to do an interview with Vic Lombardi and Katie Wingy and Chris Dempsey already. Really wanted to bring you on the channel. You've been asked for an awful lot since I started the channel, just because so many people you're so popular with so many people.
Well, that's very nice to say that. I don't remember being asked to come on your show, but now that you have, I'm here and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, one of the things I really wanted to just kind of ask you just a little bit about your background, just like how you even got into doing color commentating and just even working with the Nuggets. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit like how you got started in the business and when did you find out that you wanted to get involved in the NBA?
Wow, that's a long journey. I'm glad we have 45 minutes. Basically, I was an athlete. I played basketball and volleyball throughout my career, high school and college. And then my basketball career ended at San Diego State, and I started playing volleyball seriously. And I got on the USA national team. And one thing led to another, and that's kind of how I got started in the business. A volleyball coach who I knew well, Al Skates of UCLA, he was coaching UCLA and winning a bunch of national championships, and they were just starting televised volleyball on ABC Wild World of Sports. So in 1978, his team, or 77, his team won the championship. But in 1978, his team was in the championship finals, so he couldn't do the broadcast. And ABC asked him, do you know anybody that could do volleyball color commentary, that knew something about volleyball? And I happened to be training with them because I was still in pursuit of the national team at that point in time. And he said, yeah, I got this guy. He's got a big mouth and a loud voice. He would be perfect for this. So he got me my first job. That led to my entrance into a broadcasting career. I'll make it kind of quick. I was the volleyball color commentator de jour for a while, and then I got to do play-by-play. I figured there'd be other volleyball players coming along like Karch Karai, and so that being a play-by-play announcer would be where it's at. And someone had told me, well, look, if you can do play-by-play in a number of sports, then you can have a little longevity in this business. So I got into that, and then I started doing some other little sports as a play-by-play man. And then I got to do my first basketball game. It was a women's basketball game out in California for Prime Ticket. And really my big break into big-time basketball, I was negotiating my second contract with Prime Ticket, and the producer at that time, Don Corsini, he offered me what he thought was a good contract, and I didn't like it so much. And I said, I'd really like to do more events than you have me doing here. And he said, well, how many events do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to do like 70 or 80. And he said, well, give me a minute. And he walked out of the room, and he came back like 5 minutes later, and he said, how would you like to do UCLA basketball with Bill Walton?
Wow. And
so that was a game changer in terms of my career. I started out doing that, and I worked for Prime doing UCLA basketball for 3 years. And then one thing led to another. I left there. I went to ESPN. I started doing freelance work. I moved to San Diego. And in 2004, I got a call that there was this new network coming up called Altitude Sports and Entertainment. They were looking for someone to do the Denver Nuggets. Drew Goodman had been doing both at the same time, and he had to make a choice. Did he want to do baseball or basketball? He couldn't do them both because they're going to overlap and go to different entities. And so he chose baseball. I called my agent, was submitted. I got everybody I knew to recommend me, from Dick Ebersol, the head of NBC, to Bill Walton, to Tom Fuhr, who was the president of Prime Ticket out there at one time. And I ended up getting the job. And that's basically how I got to Denver. It was a little bit lucky. Kiki Vandeweghe was also involved. He was the general manager at the time. And an interesting fact. So he went to my high school. We went to Palisades High School out in California, as did Steve Kerr.
Wow.
And so when I mentioned to Kiki that I was trying to get the Nuggets play-by-play job, he wrote a text back to me. He said, "Well, let me see what I can do about getting another Palisades guy in here." And so he put in a good word, and I think just the stars aligned for my first big job in the NBA.
Wow. So can you give us some clarification? Because you have some power pack names that you went to high school with. So did you know Kiki Vandeweghe and Steve Kerr when you were in school?
Yes. Well, when I was in school, yes, because they were young, up-and-coming players. Obviously, when I was actually at Palisades High, they were like junior high school guys coming up, and I knew of them as being good players. But then when I graduated, I would go back to Palisades. They had a great Monday night run there, where you could play against guys like Roy Hamilton and Reggie Theus and former NBA guys. And so I ended up playing with them and watching their high school games and kind of not shepherding them any way, but playing against them in alumni games and things like that. So I've known those guys for a lot. And the other Palisades guy that helped me out was Chip England, who was the ace shooting coach, used to be here with Denver, has been with Greg Popovich for the last 10 years. He's also been a big influence, and he really helped me get this job with altitude. And
if I'm correct, he was the one that also helped Kawhi Leonard to develop his three-point shot when he was with San Antonio, correct?
Yeah. He's been a shooting coach to the stars. Obviously, he helped Tony Parker. It's Kawhi Leonard. The name is escaping me now. You're going to laugh, but the original guy, the 6'7" forward for the Detroit Pistons who played at Duke, who I can't remember his name right at the moment, but he was his first client, and he's been like the A-list of
Grant Hill.
Coaches. Grant Hill
Wow.
was his buddy, and he knew him from Duke, and he worked on Grant Hill's jump shot. And if Grant hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been one of the greats of all time. Still was darn good. But Chip, all around great guy, great coach, and wish we still had him here in Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have a question then. So you spent the first part of your basketball color commentating career at UCLA next to Bill Walton. So can you kind of give us some insight? Like, what was it like first stepping into that role? And then what was it like working with Bill Walton?
Well, let's clarify. So I started out as a color guy. So I was the Scott Hastings of the volleyball world. Yeah. Then I transferred to play-by-play. So I was the number one guy, and then I would work with the analysts. And so I got a chance to do a bunch of play-by-play in different sports before I got to Bill. But it was wonderful working with him. I had known him from California. He dabbles in beach volleyball. I can't remember when I first met Bill, but I just knew of him, and we developed a fast friendship working for UCLA and for Prime Ticket at that time. I'll tell you an interesting story. So Bill, he's always listed as 6'11", 240, but he was really about 7'1". Wow. And so the height disparity, I'm not short. I'm 6'3", and pretty athletic, but he just towered over me. So I just got the idea, we really need to get some bar stools in here, some stools we can sit down and look fairly symmetrical. So I went out and bought some bar stools at this furniture place. And I brought him to UCLA in my car, and we sat on him, and he thought it was great. But someone there told me, hey, you can't leave these overnight because someone will take them. Mm-hmm. They'll just disappear. Don't leave these overnight. So every night we would do the game, I would bring the stools from my house, put them in my car, drive them to Pauley Pavilion, the parking lot, get out, hold on to the stools, and I'd walk into Pauley Pavilion with the stools.
Wow.
And we sit down, we do the game, we'd have the stools, and then at night, when the game was over, the guy would bring me the stools. I grab the stools. I walk it out of Pauley Pavilion with the stools. And I always thought that Bill Walton kind of liked me for that because it made it easy on him. You know, he's got bad feet, bad back, and bad neck, and bad everything. But I still keep in contact with Bill. Occasionally we get down to San Diego and have dinner with him and his family. And he's been a great supporter of all these years.
Well, I do deeply hope that Altitude Sports provides some nice shares for you that you don't have to take home anymore.
No, we're doing great. They take care of us, but I always remember that. I just thought it was kind of an interesting look in how it works with announcers, and how you do play-by-play. And sometimes you have to make do with what you have, and that was a fun story that I always remember.
Well, Chris, I think that's actually very incredible because I think for a lot of us, even just people that are trying to make their way in the world, that's some of the things that we need to hear, that even greats like yourself who've done this for a very long time, and obviously I would consider you great, you had to do things that other people might not be willing to do, but you did it. And then it also lended not just into your character development, but also your professional development. And again, it's just a part of, when you're getting somewhere that you want to be and you're growing. These are the things. Sometimes you have to bring your own stools into the gym in order to make it work. So I actually really appreciate that story.
Yeah, it's work your way up. Maybe you're in the process of that now. I'm guessing that you're getting along and you've got this beautiful Zoomcast or whatever you call it, a SwipaCam, and you're doing pretty good, and you're going to do better, and you're going to remember back when you just started and you had 3 followers and 2 people watching, and your mom was going like this, and it just works that way. You kind of have to pay your dues. You don't go from being calling high school games or wanting to be an announcer to announcing the Denver Nuggets. There are steps that you go, and I feel like I really paid my dues. I wasn't sure whether I was ever going to get to the NBA. That was always my goal. I had applied for the Lakers job, the Lakers radio job, when Chick Hearn died. I knew they had kind of a procession there. And had I stayed in California when I was there early, I mentioned that I went to ESPN. Had I not gone to ESPN, I was talking about that with my wife the other night, that maybe I would have got that job. I would have got the Lakers job when Chick Hearn passed away. But in turn, that job went to my good friend Paul Sunderland, who worked 3 years for the Lakers and then was let go. And he's had a good broadcasting career, but I think maybe if I had gotten that, maybe I would have lasted longer, maybe not, because they were so impatient back then. But it's been a great run for me here, working for Altitude and the Nuggets. This is my 18th year, and so you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, and again, I know the phrase is loyal to the soil, and so Denver has been very loyal to you. But I really want to transition to this point because I mentioned earlier, I have literally been watching you and listening to you call Denver Nuggets games since I was really at the end of middle school, beginning of my freshman year of high school. And so I remember when Carmelo Anthony finally came to the Denver Nuggets, like I would see him at Hiawatha Davis and Park Hill, but then I would listen to the games and hear Chris Marlowe make these incredible calls. I remember when he was hitting these game-winning shots over the Seattle Supersonics, and there you were. I remember when we got Allen Iverson. I remember when we got Chauncey Billups and Marcus Camby and everybody. I always remembered, even the Lakers, when we used to play the Lakers in the playoff. I remember hearing your voice, and I remember the way that you would be able to talk about the team, the image that you would be able to paint about what the team is doing, what's happening, the things you were aware of, the statistics, all of it. So I think that that kind of artistry is brilliant because it takes a particular kind of person to tell stories in a really innovative and cool way. And you've always done that. So like, I sincerely mean that I have genuinely like enjoyed listening to you and learned a lot from you over the last 18 years.
Well, I appreciate that. And first of all, I find it, Cameron, very worrisome that you've been listening to me since you were in junior high school or middle school. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. There have been multiple coaches, multiple eras, multiple superstars. Obviously, Carmelo was one of the greats. I mean, 10 straight trips to the playoffs, really exciting moments, some great teams in 08, 09, 10. I always think if George Karl hadn't contracted cancer back in 2010, that team might have won it all. Yeah. That was a great team, and it just kind of came apart. But doing Nuggets basketball is wonderful. I work with good people. Everybody always is trying to make the shows as good as they can be. Mm-hmm. And now we're kind of in just a wonderful era where I never thought that the Denver Nuggets would have an MVP. Yeah, I never really thought that we'd have a first team All NBA. Never thought that we'd have a chance somewhere in the next 2-3 years to win an NBA championship. Yeah, that we can beat teams like the Lakers. We can beat anybody on a given night. We can. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together. So I'm really looking forward not only to the rest of this year, but next year when we've gotten most of our team back healthy. I think the additions of Aaron Gordon. I love Aaron Gordon. I love the way he plays. The rookie Bones Highland certainly looks like a keeper. I was talking to Scott Hastings about this the other night, and I said, here's how I think about Bones. When he came in as a rookie, he'd come in and maybe 10 to 25% of what he was doing was good. Yeah. The rest of it was not. Going too fast and kicking the ball out of bounds, missing shots. Then all of a sudden he started to pick it up a little bit. He started to play pretty good, 25% to like 50% at half the time he's good. And half the time he's still making rookie mistakes. But in the last month, in March, he's lighting it up. Mm-hmm. And I would say 75% of the time what Bones Highland is doing in there is really good NBA stuff, and he's just going to get better and better. And I love a guy like Zeke Naji. Now he's out with knees, but I'm hoping that can be rectified. Someone told me, I don't know if you know what Osgood Slaughters is, but it's not a disease, but it's an issue that affects your knees. Usually, young kids get it when they're growing. When they're growing and they've back when I was a kid, I had a friend who had it, and he had to have his legs in casts for like 3 months. And now they treat it differently. But I think Zeke Naji is still growing, and he's experiencing pain in his knees, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's still out. But anyway, make a long story short, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you've enjoyed the calls over the years, and let's hope there's a lot more fun calls ahead of us.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting fact you bring up. I'll just kind of keep in perspective how young a lot of these players are. Obviously, with Zeke being in his second year in the league, he's definitely still growing. Like Dennis Rodman had a growth spurt like that as well when he was in his late teens, early 20s, grew like 7 to 9 inches almost in 1 year. So. Yeah. So for you, Chris, and you mentioned it because you were around. That was the end of the Jeff Bzdelik era when you first got to Denver. Then you got the George Karl era, and then now you've been in the Coach Michael Malone era. And there's a lot we can get to. I definitely want to talk about this current team. But for you, what are maybe some of your favorite moments as somebody who's watched this team, who has been in the city for 18 years and watching the product on the court? What have been some of your favorite moments, maybe about the Melo era or even that 2012-13 team when they were the third overall seed with the George Karl won Coach of the Year?
Yeah. Well, I would start. I got here a year after Carmelo did. And Carmelo was already really good. And there was a tremendous improvement in the Denver Nuggets from the first year to the second year. I remember the first thing that when when Jeff was let go, I went to that first press conference with George Karl. We were in Milwaukee when they made the change, and George Karl comes in, and George is an interesting fellow, great coach, has his way of doing things, and almost immediately the team got better. When George came in, it was just starting, I believe, the second half of the season, as I remember, and we went 32-8 in the last 40 games and made the playoffs. And I never forget that his partner at the time was standing over the side, and I introduced myself to her and got to know George pretty well. And that started just an incredible run with Carmelo and Kenyon and Marcus Camby, and the acquisition of Chauncey Billups a little bit later. I mean, those were really, really good basketball teams. And with a break or two, an inbounds pass that could have got by Trevor Ariza and into Nuggets' hands instead of into Lakers' hands. I mean, if the Nuggets get by the Lakers in 2009, I think they win the championship. Yeah. I really do. Yeah. That was wonderful. The Gallinari led team in 2013, that had to be one of the most disappointing times, because that was a fabulous 57-win team. They had it clicking on all cylinders, but it was not to be, as Gallinari hurts his leg on one of the last two games of the season. He's out, and we fall to a Warriors team that was just on the way up. Clay and Steph and Draymond and all those guys were just coming of age. But still, it was disappointing that we didn't beat them and move on. And then moving through the eras, we just get to, I want to kind of bypass that 5 years in between where it was just a real struggle here in Denver. We didn't have a star after Carmelo. We were pretty good. For a couple of years. Then fell into a team that wasn't quite as good. Yeah. And then Nikola Jokic is drafted, during a burrito commercial. And he turns out to be a godsend, just the kind of guy we're looking for, a guy that loves Denver, thinks it's wonderful, doesn't want to go to LA, doesn't want to go to Chicago, doesn't really care about the bright lights. And he has been he's the perfect superstar for the Mile High. For Denver, Colorado, he is just number one. So I think we're awfully lucky in that regard.
Well, look, I definitely want to ask you about even just obviously Nikola Jokic, and then even just obviously Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. Want to get to this era for sure. But you actually brought up something really interesting I actually want to ask you about. So that 2012-2013 season, I believe we won that game one from an Andre Miller last second shot, that first game of that series against the Warriors. But that was when, as you said, the emergence of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Ty Lawson, at that point in time, was a very good starting point guard. And he actually was going toe-to-toe, per se, with Steph. But I even remember watching Steph Curry in that first series, and I was just like, who is this dude, like, hitting these crazy shots and all that? Like, when you first saw that Warriors team coming up at that point in time, after that series, did you think they would end up being who they became later on?
I really didn't. I was more concerned with our performance than their performance.
Yeah.
I thought they played well. I actually thought that they kind of out-coached us and outplayed us in that series. They went small. They ran and gunned. Mm-hmm. And it felt like we were always trying to match their size and speed, which wasn't great. But I wasn't thinking, well, this is going to be a dominant team of all time.
Yeah.
I just felt like they were on their way up. They were playing well, but we didn't play our best. And that's what I remember about that series. I never really thought of it in terms like, hey, Steph's going to be the greatest shooter of all time.
Yeah.
Draymond Green is great, and Clay is awesome. Well, maybe I should have seen the handwriting on the wall there, huh? because a couple of years later they were sitting on top. So
Yeah.
you never know in this league how things are going to work out in terms of an addition here or a subtraction there or a new coach. Obviously they hired the new coach in Steve Kerr, a Palisades guy. No wonder they were doing good. But they're a fun team to watch. And who knows, we may get them in the first round of the playoffs. So that would be really interesting.
So now you bring up something else again. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to see, what you're going to witness. You never know what the next great player, next great team can look like in the NBA, which makes it maybe the best league in sports. So then 2014-15 draft, we see this player in the second round and 41st overall pick. He's sleeping when he's drafted. Nikola Jokic, he stays over in Serbia, comes over the next year, 2015 season, and he plays really well in summer league. He looks different, but you can't necessarily tell like he's going to be this superstar, generational talent, maybe top 20 player ever. Like, what were your first early impressions of Yoke when you first saw him play?
Well, it was interesting. When I looked at him, he passed the eye test. You can just look at basketball players if you've played and you've covered, and you can go, well, that guy can play or he can't play. And I knew his rookie year he could play. Now, how much he could play, I had no idea. He was going to be a transcendent player, but I thought, look, this guy can dribble, he can shoot, he's a marvelous passer. Does he need to get in better shape? Yes. But I really liked what I saw there, and I remember, Chris Dempsey will deny this, but I remember having this conversation with him, and he said, "Well, Jokic isn't going to get a chance to play very much because the Nuggets, they got plenty of guys and bigs and this." And I said, I think he's going to play. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to play because he's better than a lot of these guys. He's better than Mozgov. He's better than Costa Koufis. He's better than some of these other bigs that we have. And he's going to start playing. So did I know he was going to be fantastic? No. But I knew he was good then.
Do you have a game at that point in time that you remember in particular for him? I know he had that San Antonio game that year as well. Is there anything in particular you remember about that rookie year from him?
Well, the San Antonio game, I think that was the first time he got a double-double in a game. And, he just looked a little bit, when players are young in their careers, you hate to say, well, this is going to be the next Jerry West or this is going to be the next Steph Curry, because it puts a lot of pressure on him. But you could see the way he played was very much like Tim Duncan. He was kind of mechanical. He was fundamental. He could shoot a 15-footer. He was a good rebounder. He was just everything you would kind of want in a big. I tell you the other time for me, it was kind of Jokic's coming out party when we were in England and we went over to play overseas the game in London. So the Nuggets matched up against the Indiana Pacers. And Scott Hastings and I were sitting there. I had a crowd about 30,000 in the building, and wow. Jokic just put on a clinic. And I'll never forget, Isaiah Thomas sat down. He sat in with us for a quarter, and Jokic was doing all kinds of things, throwing length of the court passes. He threw an alley-oop to Freed over his shoulder, that Freed swooping down, and Isaiah was just raving about Jokic. And Hastings said to him, well, he kind of seems like, he kind of seems like a Tim Duncan kind of a player. And he goes, no, he's Magic. He's Magic Johnson. That's what he is. That's what he's doing. And since then, there have been all kinds of comparisons with Larry Bird, with Kevin McHale, obviously with Duncan. And I think Larry Bird is the most apropos comparison to Nikola Jokic and what he can do. They're so similar, so smart, so heady, so gifted, not tremendous athletic ability, but underrated athletic ability. And so those are the two moments that I remember about Jokic. And from there, from London, Once coach put him in the starting lineup on that December 15th, that one year, it was all gravy.
Yeah. So, and I think I would love for you even to speak into this a little bit, because you have the ability to do it in ways that a lot of my audience hasn't, because a lot of them didn't get a chance to see Larry Bird in his prime, obviously in the late 70s and in the 80s. Why do you feel like Nikola Jokic is such an apropos comp for what Nikola Jokic is right now?
Well, they're both bigs. I suppose they're both white, so you kind of compare them a little bit. You know, it's always hard to compare like Larry Bird to Magic Johnson. They're compared,
yeah,
but they're not. They weren't similar players.
Yeah,
and I think when you look at Jokic and the way he moves at his own pace. He goes where he wants to go. He can make jump shots. So could Bird. Had Bird been playing today with the rules of today, he might average 30 a game for his entire career. Mm-hmm. He was just such a gifted player, and he was a visionary passer. So there's some players that can make passes, like I can pass the ball to you, and you can pass the ball to me. But Jokic can pass the ball over here where you're kind of running and you go, oh my God, I've got a layup. He can pass you open, and that's what Larry Bird could do. He made some of the most incredible passes. And when and particularly with Magic Johnson, I always admired that aspect of basketball. You know, who could make the no-look pass or over the shoulder or through the legs, or he could just do that. And when I watch, we actually did a comparison the other night to Jokic to Bird, and just showed them doing similar kinds of moves. You know, dribbling shots off the wrong foot, passes behind the back, you know, rebounds where you throw the length of the court. So I think that they're very, very similar. I think 2 years ago, people go, you compare him to Larry Bird, you're nuts. Marlowe, you're nuttier than Hastings. No, I'm not. And a lot of people are comparing now. We've compared Nikola Jokic to Larry Bird in their like 6th year, in their 7th year. Numbers are very comparable. The one thing that will get Jokic over the top and into the discussion as one of the greats of all time is championships. Yeah. The Nuggets are going to have to win a championship or two while Nikola is here. And then that might get him on a par with Larry Bird.
Right. So, you know, there's a lot, obviously, just even with this section right here that we can pull on, but I have made the comparison for Nikola Jokic and the way he controls the game. I think Larry Bird obviously is there. I think Magic, especially in transition. I mean, over the last 2 years, but especially this year, Nikola Jokic has become one of the best transition players I've ever seen on the court, just the way he's able to control the flow, whether it's by passing or even getting to the spot. When he beats everyone down the court, as you have called out many times, he gets to low post position and waits for everybody to give him the ball. But I think LeBron James is another one, just because when you watch LeBron in the finals, you get to see how he controls every single possession on the court. And Jokic does that, especially when in the clutch time and all this other thing. So for Jokic, you know, we've talked about this in different cases in different spaces before, but why do you think it is, and has been, that a lot of the NBA kind of powers that be, the national media and others, why do you think they might have had been as slow to crown Nikola Jokic as maybe the best player in the NBA, which he's looked like the last 2 seasons, or maybe even going to be one of the Pantheon greats? Why do you think people have been a little bit slower when it comes to Jokic?
You know, I've had a lot of chance to think about this, and I've got a really good answer, because he doesn't look like your average NBA player. He doesn't do things like your average NBA or your star NBA player. He looks different. He shoots off the wrong foot. He does things completely different than what you think a 7-footer should look like. Joel Embiid is an NBA center. That's what an NBA center should look like, according to most of the experts. But Nikola Jokic is so unique and so one of a kind. I always thought when they gave Kristaps Porzingis the nickname the Unicorn, they were just totally wrong. Totally wrong. He was a tall guy who could shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, there have been plenty of those, but there's been nobody in the NBA. And you can go back. I go back into the 60s, but I've done research in the 50s and 60s. There's just nobody like him. There's never been anybody like him. You know, with Jordan, you can say, well, Kobe did a fair imitation of Jordan. Right. You know, Larry Bird is a difference maker, but Rick Barry came before. You know, Connie Hawkins, Elgin Baylor, Julius Irving, all those guys, you know, had some similarity to it. But it's hard to look back and say, oh, this guy is not like Nikola Jokic. So I think the powers that be, hell, they couldn't even pronounce his name for 5 years.
They still can't. Chris,
no,
I'm telling you, if you don't watch your broadcast and you hear they still say Jokovic sometimes.
Yeah, they're still trying to get that together. But I just think it's, you know, he's getting the recognition now. He was MVP. Yeah. He was voted that. I think he got almost all first place votes last year. I think 99 out of 100 or 90 out 91, of 100.
Yeah.
91 out of 100. And so, you know, it's, you know, he's almost, and I don't say this disparagingly, but he's like an acquired taste.
Yeah.
As my dad used to tell me, you know, eat your asparagus. It's really good for you, but it's an acquired taste. And so when Jokic does all these things, you know, people just, if you don't watch him every night, you know, you see a couple of passes, you see a couple of plays on SportsCenter, you see the announcers getting his name wrong.
Yeah.
And they show, you know, highlights of, you know, of Embiid and LeBron and Steph and all these guys shooting threes and making dunks. And that's really not what makes Nikola Jokic the great player that he is.
Yeah. And I've talked about this a lot as well. I think one of the things that especially a lot of my Serbian followers who are they're just turning into American sports, especially they see the way that Jokic talks about and they get frustrated at times. And one of the things I've tried to highlight is that the basketball in the NBA has always, when I say always, been ran by the Bill Russells, the Wilt Chamberlains, Moses Malones, the Daryl Dawkins, the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, LeBron James. Like we've always associated NBA dominance with this like physicality, like this literally like when they're on the court, they physically look different than anyone else. Like when you see Wilt Chamberlain run, he's like the fastest and biggest person on the court. Right?
He was.
So I think a lot of people, they just see Jokic and in this era of the NBA where you got Zion and Ja Morant and all these people, and he's not doing any of that. He's not doing a dunk contest.
No.
But he's able to see and think the game, I'm telling you, Chris, in ways I have only seen maybe LeBron James and Chris Paul in terms of their IQ.
That's good.
I've never seen anyone operate the game like he does.
Cameron, you're exactly right. Those are the two guys. Like if you say who are the three smartest guys in the NBA, there they are: LeBron, Chris Paul, Nikola Jokic. And if you go back in time, you're talking about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, who saw the game like that. They just saw ahead. They saw plays developing. They knew what was going on. They saw the big picture, how the NBA would operate. They knew what that rivalry would be like, and how to save the game. And of course, if you go way, way back in the time machine, you know, you've got guys like Bill Russell and Bob Cousy and Jerry West and some of the greats of all time that really, really thought the game. But you're right. There's nobody smarter. LeBron is on a great plane, and so is Chris Paul. But I wouldn't trade Nikola Jokic for any basketball player in the NBA right now. Wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and again, he's just his age 26 season, so he just turned 27. So again, we have a long way to go for him. So I want to ask you now, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, everyone's been waiting on them to come back, and you know we're all kind of in this a little bit of a stalemate. You know, the Nuggets are 43 and 30. They've been playing extremely well. They're 11 and 5 in their last 15. But you know, you can kind of tell that you know there's some fatigue there. what do you think, maybe just from a timeline perspective, do you, in your estimation, do you feel like they might have an opportunity to come back this year, or do you think that's something we're going to have to wait till next season?
I'm going to break it on your broadcast. They're going to be back tomorrow night against Phoenix. You heard it here. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
I'm about to say, I was like, what? I was like, wait a minute, time out. Are you telling me that they're gonna ESPN's gonna call Fox Sports? Like, did Chris Marlowe say this on the channel? Like, they sure did.
Yeah. You know what? I wish that I had the inside track. I do have inside knowledge of the Nuggets organization, right. But this has been so hard to figure out. They both seem like they were on a track to come back. They were both working out. The only thing I can think is there's been some kind of minor setback that's holding Jamal back, because it seemed like he was ramping up, and then all of a sudden he went to the G League and he practiced there for 3 or 4 days. And I'm just wondering if maybe all the pain wasn't gone and he wasn't quite as far along as he had hoped. As for Michael Porter, I just don't know. This is a tight lid on this. Yeah. It's possible that in the next few games he could just show up on the questionable list, which generally means you're cleared for action. Yeah. That being said, he might not play the rest of the season. I just don't know. We see him working out before games. I know that Murray had played a little 5-on-5, which is the precursor to coming back. Mm-hmm. But who knows whether he played 5-on-5 and the next day, he had pain in his knee. So I'm not sure the Nuggets have the horses to win it all this year. With Murray and Porter at their best, I think they do. Yeah. So maybe the window for the Denver Nuggets is next season, and that we try to get into the playoffs this season, try to do the best we can. Yeah. Win a first-round series like we did last year. Win a couple series like we did the 2 years before in the bubble. Maybe it can be done. I just don't think we have enough to beat the great teams that have, a couple of Hall of Famers and an All-Star and a guy that was an All-Star. You know what I'm saying? Those kinds of teams. That's kind of the team we saw with the Boston Celtics, who are playing great right now. They have two really transcendent talents, plus Marcus Smart, plus a number of really good role players. Yeah. And maybe the best team in the NBA right now. I don't know if we have enough firepower to beat those teams, but we'll see. You never know. That's why you play them.
Yeah. Well, one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, Chris, is just especially for people that have an interest to maybe even pursue a pathway similar to yours, and they want to go down that journey, and even just want to be involved in sports and covering sports, and especially on the sideline. And again, I also want to commend you, watching you and Scott Hastings, but also watching you and Katie Wingy, also watching you and Chris Dempsey and your interaction with Vic Lombardi. I will say that as somebody who watches content often, your interactions and the culture you all have built is very healthy, and I enjoy seeing it, because not everybody's able to work together in the way that you all do. So again, it's just, like I said, it's really, really good to watch it happen.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to say it's not easy making those jokers look good on television, and I have to work twice as hard. But they're all good talents. We all get along, and it's kind of an interesting grouping, because everybody in the group that you mentioned kind of has their different thoughts about the Nuggets and the players and how things should go, and what about the coach and what about the team. So it's fun to interact. I try to keep it a little lighter, try to stay positive. There are a lot of down moments in an NBA season, and I just think that, I think the fans want to have hope, and they don't want to be told that this is bad and this is not going well, and Denver's never won a championship, blah, 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 blah. No, I try to think like, hey, maybe a championship's right around the corner. So thank you for the nice comments.
Yeah. And so for you, if you would say, like, people that are aspiring to do what you've done, would you have any advice that you would offer for some young people, especially, that want to do it?
Well, I would say specifically, if you wanted to do my job, just my job, play by play,
Yeah.
the one good notion that I had when I was a little younger is to go to games and call the games on your own. So when I wanted to be a basketball broadcaster, and I would take a little tape recorder. Now everybody has cell phones, but I would take a little tape recorder and I would go sit in Pauley Pavilion by myself, and I would make up a board. I knew the UCLA players, and they'd be playing, I don't know, Loyola or St. Mary's or whoever. And I would just call the game. I would say, hey, everybody, welcome to Pauley Pavilion. I'm Chris Marlowe, and today's game, it should be a great one. You've got UCLA and Arizona, the two top teams in the Pac-10. And let's take a look at the starting lineups. And then I do the lineups, and we get going. And I would call the game, and I would make up, I'd make up phrases, and I'd do, I would, because I had grown up in a basketball town of Los Angeles, I knew a lot of the phrasing, and I would try to integrate the phrasing. And then I would go take the tape, and I'd plug it into my car, and I'd listen to it on the way home and at home. And I go, I said terrific 10 times in the first quarter. I don't want to do that again. And I just kind of molded my thing. So if I were doing it, I think that's the best way. If you love play-by-play, which I do, and you love going to games, buy a ticket, get in there. People look at me when I first started to do that like I was Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde. What is this guy doing? And then it kind of got to be every game before I'd gotten the UCLA job. This is when I was working my way up. Mm-hmm. I think that's the way to do it. And I would also say is in terms of acquiring the job is in high school, try to see if your school broadcasts the games. Do they have a radio station? Do they have any kind of a television station? Certainly college, they all do. Get into college, join the TV guy, go find out who the TV guy is, and say, can I be your assistant? Can I work with you? And then go to those games and broadcast the games. It's easy to do. It's the one thing that can get you better. Plus, you also have tape that you can put together. You can edit together and try to find 3 good minutes. That's what you need. You need 3 good minutes of an introduction. Hey, I'm Chris Marlowe, blah, 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 blah. Let's get it. And then you come back with a cut. Hey, first quarter, the Bruins leading Arizona, 15-4. Walton's got 13 already. How about that? And then you can put that together, and then you have an audition tape. So not only do you get practice, you get an audition tape, and then you're able to submit that to people. And then I would also say, find a mentor, find someone that you can send your tape to. I had a guy named Lou Riggs. He was like a broadcasting coach out in California. And so I would send him my tapes, and, for $50, he would go through that and write me 12 pages of notes. You said on the broadcast, Cameron was the number 2 rebounder in the NBA. Well, who's number 1? I want to know who's number 1. Or you said this here, but make sure you back it up with what you say there. And, use of terms. You could have said terrific. You could have said wonderful. You could have said great. You could have said dominating. Expand your vocabulary. Get to where you're able to interchange phrases of greatness, of bad. So I think those are some of the ways that you can do it. Doing it is best. You find out if you like it. You get an audition tape. You go to college. You find out what you're doing. Find a mentor. Submit your tape. Someone says, I like it. Go to work. And then one day you end up doing the Denver Nuggets for 18 years. And you feel pretty good about how you did it.
Well, I appreciate you. This has been great. By the way, you have a daughter who is on Twitter who has had some excellent tweets. So she definitely takes up after her father in her vocabulary.
Well, Grace is she's one of a kind. She works in the movie business out in California. That's her. Wow. That's her day job. and she aspires to be a writer. So she's very, very clever. And in fact, she's so clever. A lot of the takes and tweets she has, I can't retweet because I feel like, hey, this might get me in a little bit of trouble with the Denver Nuggets for altitude. But generally, she's awfully funny. And that tweet she had the other night that got on TNT about Shaq, needing Google Translate was precious. She's definitely hit the big time.
Yeah, she's excellent. So, Chris, this has been great.
I will pass that along. She will be appreciative.
Please, yeah, I'm a big fan. Again, I appreciate the time. This has been excellent. You all, again, please go follow Chris on Twitter. Obviously, you can catch him every single Denver Nuggets game. And Chris, we're glad you're feeling better as well. Glad that you're back and everything. So look, y'all are great. Hit the subscribe button. We will be back for another episode. We will see y'all soon.